Okay, video anniversary. You can stop talking. It's rolling. Okay, welcome to the State of the Mesh. Towards the end of 2016, we got a grant from the Internet Society, Beyond the Net. And this grant covers our expenses for setting up and maintaining our Supernode antenna, and also equipment for installs and outreach and educational materials. So far, we've mainly used it for paying for the Supernode. And as part of the grant, we have to document our progress and how our network is set up. That's something we wanted to do anyway, but it's definitely a big part of the grant. So once we got the grant, there was some good things and bad things. So we paid the bills and we planned our expansion. But there was a lot of conflict and a lot of political and legal rants, and at the end of it, the grant writer quit. And everything calmed down after he quit. So after a year of struggle figuring out how to do our contract with the Sabi data center and how to come up with money and how to physically do it, we finally did this. Got this up towards the end of January. Zach was up there doing it on a below freezing day, sticking the radios in there, 3 radios in the back of this thing. Yeah, so far we've only got one antenna. Our relationship with Sabi's changed, so we don't really know the new people there, and we have to renegotiate adding more antennas up there. So this is the antenna we have is a 90-degree sector antenna, and it's 5 gigahertz, the Wi-Fi frequency, but it's using a proprietary AirMax, so it's not compatible with your phone or anything. And it's divided into 3 sections. There's 3 radios in there, and each is capable of connecting to 60 different rooftop antennas. And that's an approximate area of coverage of this antenna. So on January I'm calling them. So we've got just on the weekend we've got a new one down here, and I think that's Peter is there. We can probably connect to Peter's place from that Chinatown rooftop. And yeah, so all these gray dots can now be connected from these 9 direct connections to the Supernode. The one that was done on the weekend they did it themselves. We do have some technical instructions, so you can do it yourself if you want, if you're comfortable with flashing routers and drilling holes. This install was in Chinatown, and this is the first time we've done a whole bunch of apartments in a building. So, and this is what we want to do more of. We've got 5 apartments in this building. We often use old TV antenna masts, so that's why it looks so crazy and messy. But we've got some edge point routers here, so this is plugged into the router here, and then more Ethernet cables go down into the apartments below. So I'll just show you a few photos of these installs. This is in Clinton Street in the Lower East Side. It's almost got line of sight, but you get some knife edge diffraction around buildings, so it got quite a strong signal. So the antenna's just behind the blue condo there. And that's another view from a rooftop. So it's another good rooftop that can see a lot of the Lower East Side and up to the East Village there. This is Jim's node, number 556. I often get asked if a tree is going to block the signal. So this was our first attempt to go through a tree, and it worked. We got about 70 megabits per second down. I think we would have got about 85 if the tree wasn't there. So yeah, you can go through a single tree.
Is that in Dublin?
No, this is in Alphabet City. It's on 7th Street in Alphabet City. It's another view of that install. And this is just a few doors down from me. This is Jenna's install, one of the first ones again. You can see the Supernode in the background. And Ono on 9th Street. So if you've filled in our join form, you've agreed to this license here, and a very important part of the license is that by joining the network, you agree to extend it to others under the same conditions. So all of the people with these rooftop installs are bound to extend the network. So and they've all been happy when I mentioned this. So everyone's happy to let us install repeater routers up there so we can connect other rooftops. So hopefully this is the next stage. We'll start connecting these gray dots from the 9 installs we have. So we're up to about 2 installs a week now. But, I think we should be doing more like 2 a day, and Alex wants to do like 6 a day. So there's a lot of room for speeding this thing up. Scott has volunteered to do email, which is such a time-consuming thing for me, and that's really helped me a lot. Yeah, and Alex has got a lot of experience with doing installs on roofs. And we've also got another neighborhood happening at the moment in East Williamsburg and Bushwick, which is just starting to get a lot of installs, and perhaps we've got a second Supernode going there too.
So currently, where is the most amount of friction? Is it getting people to volunteer to do the install, or is it getting somebody with a rooftop that'll do it, or is it something else? What are the things we need to work on to speed things up?
Yeah, multiple install teams.
we should do more publicity. We haven't had publicity in about a year, and that's coming up on the next slide. Yeah, publicity and more install teams, and the word of mouth is getting out now. People just hear about us, and yeah, but we definitely, I think we can easily multiply by 5 the amount of installs we're doing. Yeah, this is a graph of people filling in the join form, and on the left, the very first one, that's around 8 or 9 per month, and then we got on TV on Pix 11 and Fast Company and Brooklyn Paper, and that was all within a couple of days, and so we got like 30 people joining in one day, and that happened a few times. There's a Y Combinator, and then articles in Metro and East Village Grieve, which helped a lot with the East Village. And then a Motherboard Vice article where that just went crazy. And but we haven't had any publicity this year at all. So yeah, the numbers have gone down, but they're gradually building just through word of mouth and through Twitter and whatever. But we definitely need another big round of publicity. I'm doing an interview next week, and he's asked to interview some other people. So if you want to be part of the interview, let me know. I forget. It's a serious journalist. He's written for Newsweek and stuff. So one thing that is it's actually part of the grant too is to note our difficulties and what we could have done better and what failed completely. So the next few slides are about that. And single tenant rooftop to rooftop just doesn't work. We tried that in Brooklyn. This was a great install that I did with Eddie, and we got 2 rooftops together, and this person shared their internet, and 2 months later he moved out, and so the other guy was left without internet, and I was wondering what happened to his install, and he moved out. He moved out later as well, so we got 2 abandoned nano stations out there. So the way to get around that is like what we did in Chinatown, get a whole bunch of people connected in the building, and that way there'll always be someone in the building that wants it to work, and will give us access to if something goes wrong. Or if someone owns the apartment, you know they're going to be there for a very long time, or someone like me who's got rent stabilized, I'll be there for a long time. And the other thing is, because if you go rooftop to rooftop, you're relying on just a single person to be a gateway, and it's just not a reliable gateway. But having the Supernode, we've now got a reliable gateway. We know it's going to stay on. This has been a big failure. I just can't figure out how to collaborate with the city. We'd love to get access to NYCHA buildings, and for 2 reasons: because they're the tall buildings, and they could give us access to more neighborhoods. And these people, some of them don't have internet, so we'd be really helping them. There was a big grant, Rise NYC, which we missed out on. That was a couple of years ago, but that would have been perfect for us, and that's still ongoing, and so we just got to look out for other grants and figure out who to talk to within the city. So if anyone wants to help work with us on that or has ideas, let us know.
Do you have any relationship with the Rise NYC people?
No.
Would you like one?
Yeah. But we're too late for the money, though. That's problem, isn't it? But if we can get access to buildings, like that will help a lot. This has been disappointing. I'm getting collaborations going. So some have been great. DKIX and Packet.net. They've been wonderful. And MicroOffice just gave us a nice pair of air fibers. But it's hard to keep the collaborations going, and it's a lot of emailing and meetings and stuff. And if someone wants to help with that, it would be great. This is another big problem all mesh networks are having is the lack of good hardware and firmware. The TP-Link locked down their routers, and especially the 5 gigahertz ones and the dual bands. They discontinued our favorite little router. So yeah, we're kind of, I've been using second-hand routers for indoors, the 3020s, the little square ones. But yeah, we need a solution soon. And what I'm going to do is set up regular hardware firmware meetups, because there's a bunch of us that are interested in this, but we never get around to doing it. But we really got to start doing that. Lisa?
Priorities. Well, I wasn't going to speak towards installs or organization priorities, but I know that that's on our list of priorities, right? Priorities for outreach. We do have leaflets. So Brian talked about one of the things that have worked is that we would light one building and with multiple users. So an idea came up that why not put leaflets under doors so people know that this building is lit, right? So we're working on those leaflets right now. It's posted on Slack. First draft is out, and we could really use some feedback before they're printed. And then we have also on the list of priorities is to create an outreach package so that volunteers and visitors who come to these meetups can know right off the bat, this is what I can do to get my building connected to the mesh network. And included in that outreach package, I guess if you want to call it a package, is a landlord letter template that we need to post on the website. But there's one that we put together that's posted on Slack, and this was actually something that came up from a gentleman in the Lower East Side who actually wrote to the building management company. So we kind of borrowed his letter and reformatted it so that it's general, so that anyone in here can use it if you want to reach out to your building management about putting up an antenna on the building, if that's the route you want to go. Or you can go the other route, which is just to put it up. We've also talked about putting an animation on the website to illustrate how mesh networks work. So one of the challenges that we've encountered when we speak with potential mesh users is that they don't really quite understand how this all works, and it's so hard to boil it down in words, so why not use pictures? Would be great to have somebody who is talented and can help put together the animation. It was an idea that came up. We haven't executed because we need someone to help with that. And then another feedback that we received from just general meetup visitors is that the feedback is that the website is not 100% clear, does not completely answer questions, and so we're working on addressing that as well. So for an example, I want to talk a little bit about something that worked, well, kind of working right now. So this is an example. So David lives at the Hellman Housing Corporation. It's in the Lower East Side. He has line of sight to 375 Pearl Street, and he's an individual, came to the meet. Actually, I'm not quite sure how he heard about us. Do you know? Have you met him? we've only
He did
communicated.
come to a meeting.
Okay, we've only communicated mostly by email, but this is completely his initiative, and he thought this is a really cool idea, and so he put together a letter to the building management, visited with the board. We helped him put together pricing out the solution for the campus, and I believe there are about 200 units on the campus, right? Yes, his residential campus has about 200 apartment units. And so his idea was that, how about I just get my building connected to the mesh, and then we'll slowly expand. And there's a courtyard in this community, and he would like to get Wi-Fi in that courtyard. And in addition to that, the building management office can also have low-cost Wi-Fi, broadband internet access. So it was a really great idea on paper, and we all loved the idea. He met with the board, and actually we got an update from him today. It was a hard sell for him. They were completely on board with the idea, except they said no. So, and according to David, he thinks that it's because they're a little bit confused about how this all works. They don't really understand. It's really simple. We just put up antennas, right? And David was completely willing to kind of put it up on his own, on his own dollar, on his own dime, right? Just to test it out and to demonstrate that it works. Unfortunately, they declined, and so he's going to still test it out. He is selling that idea to a few users in his building to demonstrate that it works, and slowly it'll organically expand. So. That's one example of an individual taking it back to his community that we can write something up on that. Yeah.
Would you plan to run the backhaul and that all through your Supernode?
Yeah, it's got very good line of sight.
They've got the capacity on the node?
Yeah.
What is the capacity on the node?
Gigabit. We could get 10 gigabit up to the roof if we needed it, but using Wi-Fi, it's almost impossible to use 10 gigabit.
But if you've got 200 people on a campus, here using looking at Netflix, you're going to be up to like a gigabit pretty quickly.
It goes a long way, a gigabit, and when that time comes, we have ways of increasing it. But you have to use point to point, like to get a gigabit, say, to that complex, you have to use a point to point. And we could do that if we had to. So, yeah.
Maybe have some insight on this as well. My name's Clayton Banks,
I'll Clayton, yeah.
Silicon Valley, and we're doing something quite similar. And one of the things we're running into is building owners are getting paid by the incumbents to have equipment on the roof.
Yeah.
So when you come in and say, "Hey, we'd love to, even if it's providing free service," the question they have is, "Well, how much are you going to pay?"
Yeah.
So I'm just curious how you guys have handled it.
Yeah. Nearly all the rooftops, I'd say all of the rooftops I've done don't have any of the cell phone antennas on them. It's only some rooftops where they do that, and but most rooftops are kind of anarchy. There's all these antennas up there, and nobody knows who they are, and nobody really cares. And you just go up and add another one to whatever's up there.
Yeah, I think if you're going to talk to a building full of people, you might have more success where it's co-op apartments than a corporation that owns it, that is looking to be paid by Time Warner or somebody. Have you approached any that are co-ops? Have you?
I haven't approached any residential buildings, only churches personally.
And what about churches?
What about churches? Well, they're very confused about what this is. We have different leaflets that really boils it down to the very basic and how it helps the community. And actually, David's community was affected by Hurricane Sandy, so we really highlighted that and how the network could come into play if something like that should happen again. So
it seems like confusion about the technology and suspicion of how could this be free? What's the catch? Maybe our impediments.
That's what it sounds like. That's the feedback that we're getting. Yeah. But I mean, I'd be curious to learn what other building management offices feedback.
So we need to solidify our message.
Yeah.
Something that's correct, but also short. Yeah.
Everybody speak up.
It also sounds like building owners will be worried about liability, right? Like they don't really understand the liability and who it falls on. And to be the first person to accept something like mesh and not have a framework or an example of how it works might be a little jarring to a building owner. I'm just thinking. And the other thing
I think you're dealing with committees, and it just takes one or two people to say no, and it just doesn't happen. It's just hard.
But that might be something to focus on in the materialistic district, because it is. I would see it as a question that a lot of building owners would have.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to ask is, for those of us not on Slack, is there some way we can access the materials we talked about?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's not published yet because they're not ready. I'm looking for feedback to make sure that the message is clear and crisp.
Maybe you could put things in Google
Google
Drive.
We're
Share
putting stuff on
that way.
GitHub.
Yes.
Is that
we-
like when things are published?
Yeah, some is on GitHub. I think we haven't updated the GitHub one in a while, and the rest is on Google Docs. We can share whatever we do.
Is there an email list or something? No.
Oh, there is, but it's not used. So I've been running a little neighborhood mesh network for over 2 years in my neighborhood, and one thing I didn't mention too much at the time, it was incredibly unstable. I have to reboot routers like once a day. So I spent a really long time writing this Watchdog script to figure out when it was having problems and restart services on the router. And it ended up that I finally got it by January, where I didn't have to reboot routers anymore. Like I haven't. This one's been up for 150 days. It's a neighbor's router. So I haven't rebooted a router since January now. Which is, I'm very happy with that. But we need to. Zach's going to go into this in his presentation about needing to improve monitoring, so we know, when someone turns their router off or whatever, so we can figure out what went wrong. And this is the Supernode monitoring software. This is the beginning of my documenting how to do what we do, and it's nycmesh.net/how, and I get a lot of emails from all over the world now, people asking, how do I set this up in my country or city or whatever, and so I didn't have enough time to answer emails, so this is very good. I just point them to this now. I'm going to keep expanding this. It's about 4 pages now. I want to get up to about 30 or 40 pages. So there's these simple to get to things, how and why, and data now on the website. This is the why we're doing this. The question that gets asked the most at meetups: why are we doing this? And this is our data policy, which Zach wrote. It's another question we get a lot. What do we do with data? So basically, we don't We don't collect it. So Zach, do you want to take over? It's on the next tab.
Oh no. What did I do? Of course.
Any eye would be good.
Okay. So
For the
I'll,
microphone.
yep. I'll give a little update of where we are with the Supernode, how far we've come with it, and so on. It may seem like we put a lot of concentration on the Supernode, but we do so because the Supernode helps bring stability to the network. Brian mentioned that earlier people's connections, people would move away, they would leave, and people would be stranded without internet, or we'd have random points moving around and so on. But the Supernode is one of the first places that's going to be stable for multiple years at a time in the network. And as we bring another node in, maybe we can have 2 supernodes, and maybe the first one will go away 5 years later or something like this. So it's a good way, it's a good example and a good test bed for us to be able to try stability in the mesh. And so to that point, in the beginning it was a little hard to get it up and running, but at this point we have, it wasn't hard, it was just committees of committees and people and funding and that kind of stuff. But at this point we're up to about 194 days of uptime. For those of you who are on the Supernode, you may have noticed, you say, well, my internet went down once. Yeah, we had some radio issues, but the connection has been up and good. We have the full internet routing table by ourselves, so we're not dependent on an ISP. We are right on the internet backbone, whatever that means. And we have, so far, just some statistics, about 7.5 terabytes have passed through the Supernode to users, including Netflix and downloads and everything. About 50 megabits a second is our average speed, and we see peaks over 200 at different times of the day, depending on who's using it. So it's well used. There was a question earlier about capacity, about how much bandwidth. Right now we have a 1 gigabit fiber connection to an exchange, so it's not like 1 gigabit Verizon Fios. It's like 1 gigabit high-end commercial internet. So although it's only 1 gigabit, it's very high capacity, and it's very low latency, high quality. And there's a lot we can do there. We can split it into 2 connections. We can go 10 gigabit. We can use lots more radios. So there's a lot. This is a really solid commercial offering. We're using commercial pieces, is what I mean. It's free to us. So in January, these are not the same icons, but in January we gave this kind of little report right here about how far we've come. And we had a couple things open that we needed to do still. And at this point, I'm happy to report that all of these things that we said we would do have been finished. So that's good. We've fiber wires to the roof. We have proper internet numbers. We put up a radio with multiple sectors. We're on a regional connection. We also performed some other things. We peered with a number of people that I'll talk about in a minute. We rewired the Supernodes so that we can support the full gigabit use to everybody with proper high-quality commercial components. We put a router on the roof with for better power, so we can power lots more antennas, lots more bandwidth up there. We even put a second antenna right now pointing towards downtown, so that's good. And now we have the metrics and statistics, which is good as well. Kind of some of the next goals, this is kind of what's coming up, and you'll see a little theme here. We want to add some more features. These are things that make it more useful for people to use and more interesting to use. And we also want to do a handful of things which will raise the quality of the network even more than it already is. For example, we want to get more features and statistics on the entire, or not features, statistics and metrics across the whole mesh. How much is the mesh in use? Is it overused? Is it at capacity? Are there certain places that should have bigger radios? Something like that. We want to get trouble alerts, like Brian said. If someone moves away, we want to get some kind of alert that says there's a hole in the mesh. That'd be kind of nice. We want to show you these graphs. We want to make those graphs so you can see them. You can see how busy the Supernode is that you guys are helping support. We want to bring in IPv6. We should do that. VPN service. We want to do some other things to make the Supernode more of a mesh point. We want to get some better frequencies, so we have better signal across the downtown area, and some other things like that. So just features and quality. Brian talked about metrics a moment ago. This is something that I've kind of been piloting for a little while, and all it does is it gathers all of the radio receive signals, how much bandwidth is in use, what the client signals are, so we can see when it rains, maybe the signal goes down a little bit, or when there's fog, it goes down. But these are things we should look at long term to try and make sure that our connection is solid, and if anything strange happens. This is, as per the data policy, this is not monitoring your traffic, just so, because someone's going to ask, right? We're not monitoring your traffic, we're watching the counters as data goes through, because otherwise we should know how busy it is, right? So that it doesn't get too, or somebody will say, yesterday at 1 p.m. something happened, right? Well, how do we know? Unless we were watching, well, we can look back and see, did some radio turn off at 1 p.m. yesterday? I don't know. So that's good. Peering, if you have any questions, just feel free to stop me. Peering is kind of a complicated topic, but where we sit right now, this was presented back in January. We have this, our Supernode sits in this regional internet exchange, and when we connect to it, we get to talk directly with other regional ISPs and other big providers like Google and Facebook. And Time Warner and Verizon are really kind of below us, if you will, because they also connect to these same places that we connect. So, this is the kind of thing we're doing, and we're happy to report that as of today, we have 6 peers. We connect directly with Apple and Akamai, PacketNet, and some other guys like this. These are local, regional ISPs, content delivery, Apple. Everyone knows who Apple is. So so these are direct connections, and by being on the exchange, we actually talk directly with 95 other networks. I checked last night. We see 95 other networks, including Google, DigitalOcean, Amazon, Netflix, Facebook, and so on, and some universities in the area. So when you watch Netflix, it goes to the rooftop of the building we have, and then it jumps down and across the fiber and right over to a Netflix node. It doesn't go through another ISP. So that's pretty cool. Same for Google and Facebook and so on. So that's what peering brings us. It's not, we're telling you this as a report. It's not something that we need to fix. It's not a problem. It's just something we do, right? Peering is something we'll do as long as we're on the exchange. It's a continuous process. As people join the exchange, as companies join the exchange, we will peer with them. It raises the quality of our bandwidth, which is good. And so this is kind of a graph of our route propagation. We talk to these guys, and these are big internet providers. So that's kind of fun. Can't read it because of the projector, but oh well. Other miscellaneous, we talked about some of the next steps. These are things you should look for that are coming up. IPv6, this is something that Time Warner has it, but it's really bad. I don't know if you guys have tried it. Verizon actually can't do this. They have to replace a large chunk of their things out in the field. So this is something we can do that we can just kind of roll it out across our network with little change. So that's kind of a nice way. It shows that this kind of network can actually scale very nicely, where a monopoly would have trouble with that. We're hoping to provide a VPN service pretty soon, so that if you are at a coffee shop or something, or you want to be on the mesh, but you have Wi-Fi, but you're not in a mesh Wi-Fi, you can jump on the mesh. You can access some of the mesh web pages and have a little better connection. This DFS frequencies is a big change for us. We have a lot of frequency contention. Manhattan's a very packed place for radios. We're opening up some more frequencies that just require little changes in our routers. So that's great. New address layout. This is more technical, but it's something that's going to allow us to be able to support full building installations really easily. And it'll be a thing that when we talk to building management, we can show them it's safe and that kind of thing. And the Supernode mesh point, this will allow us to have little routers that work better, so that they don't have to do as much work to send traffic to the Supernode. It can just go there, so we can have a more powerful connection overall by kind of distributing this traffic. So it's not these are more technical, but these are changes that are going on in the background that are kind of transparent to everybody, but will help with the network. So there's a lot of work to still do. And really the theme is that we're transitioning to quality, right? In the beginning, you know, everyone did as good of a job as they could, but we had little meshes and routers restarted all the time, and we were using Time Warner connections and so on. And it was kind of a quick and dirty thing. It worked. But I think now at this point with the Supernode, with maybe potential more Supernodes, with tall buildings, we're transitioning to a quality, engineered, sustainable community network that can support a lot of different things. It can support high connections because we actually can support the full gigabit speed, hopefully at any site, maybe someday. We have redundancy perhaps. We can support many different things. We can support non-technical users who are in the same apartment building as a technical user. We can support, you know, full building installations. If somebody's a server, we can support that. We can support multiple types of routers, public addresses, and possibly even we can support events or community spaces or conferences or other things like that. So these other changes will allow us to do these kind of quality happenings that we want. So, yep, that's all I have. Anything else? Yes.
Well, Stephanie, do you have like a documentation of this or like code?
Sorry.
Like documentation or code or something?
Yeah, that is the thing that we've been talking about quite heavily. We have a lot of documents, but what we really need to do is present them in a very clear, common way that people can just kind of look through and see our structure and, you know, read really into it. That's something that, as we've looked at like Wi-Fi and other major mesh networks outside the U.S., you know, we look at their documentation and we're proud to read their documents, and we should make that kind of thing as well. So yeah, that's something that we lack right now. And as we go through these, we should really make like solid write-ups, right? I agree. Yeah.
Hey, is there plans to do anything like intra-domain routing across hosts on the mesh or anything like that?
Yes, in fact, it does. It does that already.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the mesh. Well, that's part of why it's a little. I'll use the wrong word here, but I'm sorry. It's a little dangerous because by default you just kind of like when you run a mesh router, all of your computers are on the mesh, and then somebody else runs a mesh router, all their computers are on the mesh, and then you can kind of do things between them. And it's not like dangerous, like worms are going to go cross, but you can get to them, right? And so that's already the case, which is great. It's good for running servers and running local community networks and that kind of stuff. But I think as we transition, it's a little hard to understand for non-technical users, right? That your iPhone is visible from somebody else's house. So we need to make a way that you can have a mesh that they can access the community pieces, you can run community servers, and if you want to, you can talk to each other or not. But yeah, we already do that, and I'm hoping to bring more of that. Maybe we can do public IPs a little bit, so if you want a public address, you can do that somewhere deep in the mesh. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So the configuration for this, is it like somewhere in the GitHub repo, like the BGP, like any kind of system configuration or server configuration?
Yeah, some things are. For
Okay,
example,
the
our...
secrets can't be...
No, there's no secrets. It's just...
There's no shared secrets for...
Yeah, I mean, there's always like passwords that nobody logs in randomly, but what I mean is like the configuration and the things that we do in order to connect to other stuff, that's not secret, that's common. We'd be happy to share that. The things which are in GitHub right now are mostly like the firmware for the routers and how that works. You know, as the other person asked, it's a little, we're not really good at documentation right now, something we need to work on, and I hope as we get better with that, like the full BGP configuration should be there. There's really no reason not to show that. Yeah, the only reason we don't right now is just that it's a little hard to show. We don't have like a good spot to put it. But yeah, that will improve. I guarantee it. Yeah, anyway, other question? Oh, yes.
Yeah, so I've now heard from like multiple people about things that need more work, and because of family stuff, I missed some meetings, but I've been to a bunch of meetings, but I'm still feeling like it's a little bit hard to wrap my head around what are like the different committees and how would I, you know, I can see in the Slack, and I know how to use that, but I think if maybe before the night is over, we could highlight, you know, who's kind of heading up which teams and which teams need help.
Yeah, I think it
so
sounds
that we
like
can try and get the people who are here to figure out how do you plug in.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not in charge of the organization, but it sounds like we have probably like firmware, router building people that's just starting. We have kind of somebody in charge of each neighborhood, if you want to call it that, right? We have like East Village as Brian. I'm kind of doing the Supernode. Seva's kind of doing East Williamsburg, let's call it. You're doing
My own node.
by himself, yeah.
Writing documentation and
Yeah.
publicity, marketing.
Publicity is Lisa right now, right? Outreach, excuse me, outreach. Yeah, so I think there's definitely, we should figure that out and maybe formalize it, but it's also it's a little ad hoc, right? People can kind of do whatever they need to do, and that's kind of also a good thing. It leads to a little confusion that we probably need to fix, but yeah. Documentation, for example, unfortunately right now, maybe the reason our documentation is so bad is that everyone writes their own documentation and puts it in a little corner. And I would like to make a way that we can all have one pile of documentation, right? That's non-trivial, but yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah.
How was the coverage from some of these nodes to say, like, people walking by on the street? Like, can you often get to a mesh node that way, or is it kind of rare?
Good question. I think it's rare, yeah. Mostly because the things which you would connect to with your cell phone, for example, are going to be in someone's apartment or on a rooftop. And so if it's either going to be 6 floors up or more, or like behind some brick wall, probably on the 2nd floor in the back, you know. So that's a little hard. I think we have thought about doing like a street and like just make a region, like a street, something. And we were donated a bunch of non-mesh routers, sort of. So maybe, you know, we talked about like setting up a whole street worth, which would be kind of cool. That would be a good way to take a section. And, you know, I mentioned here like community spaces or events or conferences. This could also be like a public square, right? And we're talking to somebody right now about a public square. How do you do Wi-Fi there? And it's like designed for things which are non-meshing, but it's on the mesh, but it's safe. You know, so we're doing some technical things to get that. But yeah, it's totally possible. And it's mostly just an antenna aiming problem, right? Yeah.
Earlier on, there was a problem about where to stash kit and you know, cables and this kind of thing. Did you resolve that?
We have a few places. I mean, we would still love to have more places to stash stuff, but right now Seva will help us with that a little bit, right?
Yeah, Seva has a boat.
Yeah. So we're going to store some things there, but if you have more places to store things, we'll take them. Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say is the main goal? Are you trying to get affordable or free, ideally, access to the internet to everyone? Because there's different sort of philosophies between different mesh networks, right? Some of them want to get a lot of people on the internet. Some of them don't care about the internet. The internet's kind of a secondary thing that you could connect to if you wanted to. So where do you think, and anybody from the organization can answer this, do you think providing internet has become the main goal? Or is it still between peer-to-peer? Because it seems like a little bit that the sort of peer-to-peer connections have sort of become secondary in a way. So I wonder what's like the principal goal here?
I always point people to that /y on the website.
Even personally, you know, because maybe there's not one bigger goal. Like, why are you still?
Like the main motivation people have to bring some meetups is time. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's like what Zach was saying, we're bypassing the ISP.
Yeah, certainly there's, I asked the same question when I first started playing with the mesh. And I think it's a very important question. And, there have been a lot of mesh networks out there that have kind of lasted a few years and gone away. And generally their main goal was to provide an offline network that was only for the community, but only had like local information and it's special. And that's a really cool thing to do. But as people move away and their apartments leave, then it breaks and it fragments and you have like some guy with one node in his apartment by himself and I am the mesh, and that, that's cool, like that's great, but it's not very useful, right? And so I think in order to provide something that's useful and capable, we should have like internet as a high quality offering. Like one of the main goals should be to use internet, but it's not just cheap internet, because if you're just cheap internet, then you're competing with every other cheap internet offering out there, right? So it has to also be community, local mesh type things. I've only been with this project for maybe not quite a year, but in the beginning, or not in the beginning, when I first started looking at it, it was like little neighborhoods, and it had a VPN between, and we still have that. And that's how it merges together, but it doesn't really do a very good job of making a community network. And I think as we transition towards this, what we're doing is we have a supernode or 2 or 3 or 4, and maybe we have some tall buildings or 2 or 3 or 4, and that allows all the little connections to be able to link together. And hopefully as we start to do secondary connections, I don't think I can go back to it, but there's, those 9 nodes, half of them are on the water. We can just jump across the Brooklyn, right? We can start to bring us really together. And as we make it so that non-technical users can use it as well, they can do like wiki.mesh and get the local offline wiki and also have internet. So you can watch Netflix at the same time as you can look at local content. Otherwise, it ends up being too hard to use. Right?
So what's on the community mesh that has some activity that people use?
The wiki.
One thing, yeah. But if you want to run more, if you have ideas or want to run services, please do it. Like we'd like to.
I think that's probably one of the, when we use place to run the meetings.
Okay.
Pete is one of the original NYC mesh.
Okay, good. Yeah, so I shouldn't even say anything because I don't know what I'm talking about. But yeah.
I could speak to this a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. The Internet Society, which I represent local chapter, and we're funding NYC meshes. We work at a local level and we also work at a global level, and one of the things is that we're promoting is the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, where we're talking, top people are talking to people at very high levels about how they're going to hook their people up to the internet. And so we're saying to them, there's a point at which it stops having the big providers providing the internet out to the people, and where the people have to basically organize themselves to reach the internet. And so community networking is the way, and what we're looking for is is models and building sustainable models and building laboratories, helping people work this out. And we have projects going on in sort of a dozen or 20 places, of which this is one, where we're kind of collecting the information together, sharing it between the groups to help promote that whole thing worldwide. So it isn't just here, it's like what's being done here is being leveraged on a global basis. And then I'll also say that as far as I understood, from when I first met Brian, is the main purpose was to get internet to people who couldn't get it by any other means in the city, and to make something that worked, which it might not be reaching those neighborhoods right now, but eventually it will spread into those neighborhoods that don't have access right now.
Right. I think it's always been a sort of identity crisis kind of situation, that there's different things you can champion with a mesh network.
Mm-hmm.
One of them being getting access to the internet to places that don't have access to it. And the problem was always that the reality is that a big city like ours, yes, there are pockets of people that don't have it, but the benefits of the mesh network, it's almost as if we are virtually on the mesh network a lot of the time, right? And so what benefits you can give to a community, it's often hard to explain last thoughts that I was having when I gave this a big thing was that
you're in an ocean, but for some people there's not any water to drink, you know what I mean? Because everything is behind some kind of like password wall that they can't get at. You know, you go anywhere and you can, you know, and you can find Wi-Fi, but it's not available to you.
right, but I mean, is that right? This is we used to argue a lot.
You know, I saw the guy from NYC Link made a good. They had a thing at Civic Hall where the guy stood up and said, you know, if everybody could, you know, if you could make like one login so that you could hit any Wi-Fi in the city and like just log in through that, it was, you know, we're not short of connectivity, but we're short on access to that connectivity.
Yeah. What do you do in places where you are short of connectivity? I mean, like in rural as opposed to urban settings, or in places where the basic connection doesn't exist.
We actually have a thing where we're doing a thing in down in Arizona where we're working on tribal lands where they're talking about that. And so, you know, basically you've got to go point to point, and there's the community broadband thing now on the 3.5 gigahertz spectrum for going long distance, you know, just to get across those distances. So, that's basically, that's the best solution is to work on that kind of thing.
To also respond to your question, I don't think it conflicts with what the community is trying to achieve, that there is a different discourse inside of the community, a different motivation about participating. So I think that there is a meshing still involved that is an interesting either networking approach or political approach or social approach when you mesh with your neighbors. And there's also like, that's why I'm running the wiki, for example, is that I was banging my head against the wall where I was the single holder of the information that was put on the wiki, and when my node was going down, nobody had access to information. So my interest was into trying to set up a system that could still function as a wiki, but across a mesh network, so where the information is replicated across nodes and still being editable across nodes, and it's close to the functioning model. And then I see the project as being a community project, but where the intention is not to connect to the internet, because I don't understand that concept. It's more building our own corner of the internet, because there is no such thing as connecting to the internet except when you buy service from a big provider. But when you build it yourself, then you are the internet, and you're just expanding its reach with the people you're touching.
Sure, I mean, I believe that's in the original spirit, for sure. This was all around the time of when Twitter was getting blocked here and there in different countries, and so really the concern was, how do we not have a single point of failure? So not only does that mean networks have to be built for that, but there's the whole other side of the way that you build apps is completely different based on whether you're on a sort of server or client model, which is where we're at now. Or if you're everything that we built for any existing internet, anything up until this point has been built for that is not built here to save the last decade. So I think a lot of focus the network again is a huge part of it. But I think a huge part of it also has to be on why are people enjoying the mesh and things like that. Wiki is distributed or whatever it is. Maybe put IPFS on top of this network, which is another thing that everybody was talking about. Things like that to give a reason why, because if there's no reason why, then it's hard to tell the building on the work. Well, you can do this, right? If you don't have an example, you can tell them we can do this, then it's hard to make the case.
I don't think this would necessarily appeal to building owners. It might actually make it unappealing for them. But for me, and I'm imagining for a number of people in the room, it's a decentralized system versus a centralized system. It's controlled by a small number of people. And that cuts across a whole bunch of socio-political issues that I think easily overlap with this, and that making something like this work is a model for a whole bunch of other things. And I don't want to sidetrack the discussion, but just show of hands, how many people are interested in Ethereum? Okay, so they're doing smart contracts with Ethereum and building a mesh network that where people can support each other and opt out of the corporate system and create the society in which you want to. There's like a whole big philosophical thing that's like a whole other meeting to go into. But I saw a lot of hands go up.
It's actually
Not to go off your diversion, but Ethereum just says people just got $9 million worth of U.S. dollars of Ether stolen for the past 20 hours. So
well, there's the speculation that's going on, and that's a whole separate issue. But Ethereum is more than just cryptocurrency; it's smart contracts, and using the and right now, it's not clear what the contract is if you become part of NYC Mesh and you put something on your roof. So the idea that we could make that more clear, the idea that we could have direct democracy for people to decide what the policies are, instead of having some lawyers write terms of service that's 50 pages long that nobody wants to read.
It's actually funny that you say that. The three of us are actually interns in consensus systems right now. So we all write to develop the theory. If anyone would be interested in collaborating about that or topic, we'd be interested.
Well, before we leave, those who want to talk about Ethereum should stay at the end.
It's also interesting that Consensus calls their whole business organization Mesh. So it's a similar kind of ideological structure.
I think the other question you away from.
Of course, I'll definitely interrupt you guys. But I'm really happy I'm here. It's just great to talk shop with Signal Minds values. So we are one of the 6 that got the grant from Rise. And we are putting in a mesh network in East Harlem. And so the challenges for us, and I don't want to go on and on, I'd love to just continue to talk about it at some other point, but the challenge for us has been, even when we talk about the 12 reasons and the values, there's, in Upper Manhattan, there's such a distrust with anything that it's been hard to find that real sort of, what's going to be that thing that will trigger people to say, yeah, I want to be a part of this. And it turns out Wi-Fi is not number 1 at all. Wi-Fi is not number 1. I don't want people hanging around my store. I don't want people hanging around my building trying to get Wi-Fi and all this. What it turns out is, if they have it, then I'll take it. So they prefer that they know who is on the network, or have someone that they trust that will recommend the network, that will then sign up and say, okay, I'll get on. We have a whole lot of other barriers besides that you guys don't have. Like, you guys have to check your taxes and stuff like that. So it's almost impossible, but we're getting it done. And we're very happy about it. And I think the content is going to be the key for our neighborhood. What can they share within the mesh? What can we help put within the mesh that's going to help them just from a community perspective? I think that's going to be the linchpin for our network in East Harlem. And we're hoping that we can then expand that throughout the issue with ours is we're getting paid to do it, which is great. But as you guys experience, that money starts to run out after some time. And yet you still have to put more things out there. You still have to find somebody that's willing to give some volunteer hours. You still got to do all that kind of work. And it's difficult. So I'd love to continue to share our case study with this group and get some feedback, get some real input, maybe even some help as we move forward.
I'd like to add to that too, actually. I head up the Chinatown outreach and because Chinatown is right up at basically 75 Pearl Street, and so I would say the majority of those buildings have a great line of sight right? And so we have a few buildings that do not have Wi-Fi and have not had Wi-Fi since the beginning of their time. And they're community centers and community areas. But there is that distrust as well when I come in and say, hey, this is a really cool thing that we're doing and it's low cost and you should get involved or get on the mesh network. And to them it's like, well, why should we trust you? So we've had to build relationships with the bid and with other folks who are kind of have bigger influence. But we also encounter the trust issue in like a tight community like Chinatown as well. And I do also want to add, I don't know if anybody else knows that it's in the mayor's vision to get everybody broadband internet by 2025, and actually 18% of New York City do not have broadband internet in their homes, and 30% of that are below the poverty line. So when we think about digital deserts, it actually does exist in the city. Just to add.
35% of our neighborhood has no broadband. Not that they don't have access, it's just not affordable. So we have children at 3:30, 4 o'clock standing at libraries and Starbucks, breaks your heart trying to get to home if they're on a smartphone. It's really terrible. So you're right about the mayor's office. We work a lot with them. The mayor's office has a new CTO, as most of you probably know, Miguel, and he has a vision of just, for lack of a better word, better phrases. He wants a citywide broadband solution. He doesn't want little networks. He doesn't want my little nest or your little nest or your little. He thinks that might be too hard to manage versus a citywide solution that's affordable for everyone. We'll see how that turns out, but there's a lot of great energy on the city side to make this happen. And so we're all in the right space on it.
I just want to tie all the ideas in this row between blockchain and mesh networks. It's the same show. I mean, I didn't heard about blockchain called IOTA. So it's like we're going to do like payments on IoT and a lot of other stuff that's really payments on IoT. And so is there a way, I don't know, but it's throwing us out to the incredible brain trust we have in the room. Is there a way to make a sustainable mesh network by charging for access through like running a node or something?
Sorry, I mean, like, I've been, I did the security for like NYC for the first rollout, and we've been, having we had some similar conversations about trying to get coverage, and I don't think, it's not about like actually paying for it because the bandwidth is commodity at this point. There's the physical impacts of night edging around buildings and getting through brick walls and things like that. And personally, my feeling about Miguel's, kind of like total coverage is that that's unsustainable in the sense of like trying to blanket everything. I think that the mesh idea, my point, I didn't intend to derail the conversation about Ethereum earlier, but I was trying to go to one of the things we kind of kept pushing off is the technical, aspects of how this thing is run. And it's kind of like, in my experience, like most people don't really care too much about the internetworking. It's really getting to the bigger internet. So like we were looking at the systems like pushing certificates onto phones so that there wasn't any authentication needed. The person didn't need to put in a password or put in an email. And the idea was to be able to make the friction of moving from network to SSID and SSID like completely transparent. Because like we had a lot of suspicion on Link NYC, and the truth is that we weren't looking at the traffic. Everything was like VPN backhaul because that wasn't our business model. Really, like it wasn't actually in there, and I know that there's a lot of distrust, but I think the transparency, I think the heavy lifting of getting people to go from network to network over SSID is going to be like the magic bullet, because I think if you have a homogeneous network ownership, one link goes down, the whole city goes down, everybody freaks out. You have a lot of little overlapping networks. You're a lot more likely to have, I think, success. Both in competition, like you're going to have people competing for cool things, and you're going to get this Comcast spectrum nonsense. but the technology still really isn't there for being able to transfer the way we do on cellular.
Well, I'm going to answer your question as well. But I want to build on, I hear exactly what you're saying. When they talk about a citywide solution, it may not be on just specifically one tech. It means, for example, that, to your point, they want to see interoperability. So if there's some successful stuff out there, including the incumbents, how do we make sure there's interoperable and affordable? So there's a lot to go still. To your question, I lean more towards yes, because one of the things that I'm finding in Upper Manhattan is the community operates on a cash basis. So you can come up to Harlem, and I invite you, I hope you don't live up there. Every other corner is basically a check cashing place. And you go, why is it? Well, a lot of the community likes to work on a cash basis. Even though financial literacy is an issue, and you would save money, they would rather get ripped off at a check cashing place to have that money to be able to do what they want to do right away. So one of the things we want to say in terms of monetizing these efforts, because we have the RISE thing, but we're also building a corridor in Upper Manhattan, a smart broadband corridor, where the residents can order internet on demand. So instead of being pressured to pay some type of subscription model, if your kids need to get the homework done, you can pay $4.99 on a prepaid card and get moving. And it helps to keep this network optimized. Because I have a feeling that we're only going to have more challenges as it relates to more people getting online and more files, types, and different types of things that are going to grow over time, use cases. So we have to balance our altruistic values with the reality that people are going to start demanding more and more, even poor people. They're going to start demanding more and more. So we want to make it so that it's comfortable with that lifestyle. You want a subscription when you figure out how much money you spend per month, but we want to make it as flexible and as easy as possible. In some cases, we'll be free. NYCHA. What's great about NYCHA, believe it or not, NYCHA has, in most of the NYCHAs, almost all the NYCHA housing, if you don't know, if you put all NYCHA housing together, it's 39th state in the United States. That's how big it is. The biggest public housing in the world. In New York City. And if you go into the closets, there's 5 rooms. There's coax in there. There's even, twisted pair. Because they were promised at one time to have intercoms and all this other stuff, which the city never delivered on in most cases. But the wiring is still sitting in there. So the city knows that, and they're going, okay, how do we do this? Because the incumbents, if they come in and do it, we know what's going to happen. People will be debt. So there's an opportunity here for folks like us that have great ideas on how to make it affordable to actually work with the guild and to, at minimum, just do NYCHA. You don't just have a state that you're serving. But if we do that right, we could have the NYCHA buildings become those hubs. So I won't go any further because there's a lot more to it. But
I'm just going to say,
so I just derailed this even more.
Challenge accepted, sir.
No, this is really good because we've had a lot of NYC Mesh meetups where we just kind of talk about the technical thing, or we just talk about one of the cryptocurrencies and not the technical thing. But this is cool because we have some original founders, we have a different mesh, we have crypto people, we have Link NYC, we have ISOC, right? We have this, and we present the technical things right now, but it doesn't undermine all of this because you guys are absolutely right. The mesh needs to be used for something, otherwise it's just another Time Warner, and that's not cool, right? So, but at the same time, it also has to work and continue to work all the time. Otherwise, you end up with this thing that nobody's going to use your cool stuff on top of because it's just broke, right? So I think we need both sides, and we probably present a little more of this. Maybe next time we should have one of you guys make a presentation on a thing that can happen on the mesh, right? In addition to the technical thing, because we have to progress it as well and show more buildings are being built, more buildings are being added, and so on. But also, maybe more apps are being created, more use is there as well. So this is a really good meetup, right? And also, NYC Mesh, it's network, but it's a network of people, right? So like you said earlier that it's people trusting each other in a neighborhood, right? And same thing for here. And I think you guys in the room should talk, right? We should get on Slack, or we should get on the mailing list, or whatever, and exchange these ideas so that you, I mean, make it whatever you guys want it to be, right? It's not my network. It's not Brian's network. Well, sorry, Brian, but it should be, it's your guys' network, so use it. Yeah, put it in your building. Try it, right? I don't know. Okay. Keep talking if you want. Thanks for coming.
There's one more tab.
Oh, one more tab.
I want to just say before we finish off that the Internet Society New York chapter, if you're not a member, you should join it. It's free to join. You have to join the Global Internet Society and then say, I want to join the New York chapter. And when you join the Internet Society, it's worth joining a couple of other chapters around the world that are good chapters, And I'm personally a member of the Kenya chapter. I recommend the Kenya chapter as an interesting chapter. We've also just started one up in Illinois, and I heard today that we've got one soon coming up in Alaska. Our current North American regional manager is based in Ottawa and is very interested in hooking up indigenous peoples, and that's his. So he's kind of got a little working group on that. If you're interested in that aspect.
Do you want me to go through these real quick, or do you want to do it, or someone else doing it? Okay. I haven't seen this yet, but I think I know what it is. Right. So one of our members is going to make a nice large supernode out in Bushwick. Seven. Yeah, Seven. And yes. I mean, again, these are not my slides, but I've heard a lot about this. So we've been doing some testing along the water, and somebody else here did testing you did testing along the water, didn't you? Yeah. No. Okay.
I wish I did.
Somebody did. Or you were going to? No.
Well, not in water. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, there's been some testing. We've gotten decent speeds. Go ahead, Brian. Your presentation, right? We're going to get line of sight. We don't have line of sight, so we're going to do point to point to the boat, right? There's a boat right here. Solution. Yep. So we're going to make another supernode out here by Seva's boat. We have a nice gigabit air fiber that we're going to do to try and bring the network out there. I think we also have an offer in Queens, so maybe we can follow up on that. But this, yep, here's the air fiber. Nice big antenna. These are like $3,000 a pair, and one was donated by this micro office, right? Which was on that list, the previous. Sweet.
One, that means there's another one missing.
We have one at the Supernode right now, and one is on Seva's rooftop. In fact, there may be a picture of it here somewhere. Seva's friend provided space on the roof of a former firehouse. Very cool. So this is kind of our Supernode right now. We'll have one of the antennas on the roof and one on Seva's roof, and there'll be some redundant switching here, and hopefully we'll get several of these apartments out there. This guy Jesse has been really keen to be part of the mesh. Seva has a couple houses that he has as well, and the boat is his hackerspace aquatorium, or what does he call it? Does he call it a hackerspace? Okay, fine. And if you're in the area, I know there's 2 more buildings or 3 more buildings out there in that little triangle in the corner that we're.
Simona and Eddie.
Yeah, we're gonna get them
So
on this
is that
as well.
Jesse Tane?
I couldn't say. I don't know.
I'm looking at the team directory in Slack.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
This is his presentation. He's sick tonight, so I couldn't make it.
Okay, because I'm in Bushwick, but on the eastern part, so I have to help him bridge.
Yeah, yeah. I
across to
think
where I
the
am.
goal of this presentation, I didn't read it prior to this, but I'm knowledgeable of the project, is to make this Bushwick area kind of like another hotspot for the mesh. So.
Well, I'm in the eastern part of Bushwick. The western part of Bushwick is where all the hipsters are.
Oh.
But this morning I woke up and saw a giant art mural on the side of a building. So
must be cool.
it's spreading.
Yeah. So they've been doing some testing, basically, is what's happened. And here's the other air fiber. There you go. There's Seva and some installations. So Oh, have they built it already? Awesome. So there we go, on the rooftop. I think this is the firehouse, right? Oh, they've already mounted the air fryer. So I think this is going to be the next Supernode. Very cool. So they will, yep. So I think we have to do the air fiber back and forth. It looks like they already have the local area set up. They're going to do point-to-point to other buildings in the area. Test. Yes, just more installation, sector antennas. Anyway, so if you're interested in Bushwick and or Williamsburg, East Williamsburg, they're making this Supernode, and it looks like it's pretty professional setup. And I know those guys, they do a good job. So I'm sure we're going to have nearly gigabit speed out in Bushwick pretty soon. And again, this is not, it's not just to bring internet to this building, it's to get the whole area. So if you're out there, you should be able to point to this slightly tall building and be able to get some decent, get on the mesh. Right? So this is good.
Yeah, this is separate Slack channel.
There. Pound East W Berg _ Bushwick. Yeah.
Sorry, I might be asking a weird question here, but what is the area or region would be interested in doing a Supernode? Is that an issue of like dealing with like money for the equipment? Is that a regional thing, testing? Like how would one community area be interested in having a Supernode if their region is not hooked up to such a wide area?
I think really what should qualify Supernodes is that it's a building that we're allowed to be in. It's going to be there for a number of years. It can support a decent quantity of equipment, and it can connect to at least one of the other Supernodes or to a number of stations with a very stable connection. The goal of it is to bring some stability to the area, right, so that you can kind of have lots of people point to it. And if you can have 2 or 3, maybe they can point to 2 Supernodes, right? So really it's going to be some kind of decent tall building. It doesn't have to be, but you're not going to get many connections if not. So something like that. Just a way to kind of bridge out into the area. No, you don't agree?
With aren't there Supernodes connected by fiber?
It can be, it doesn't have to be, yeah.
Especially in the farmlands where it's easy to look away from.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is he adding a gateway to the internet except for the air fiber?
I think when I last talked to Seva, I think he said that he was going to, he has FiOS, which he'll use as a backup. He'll expose it as a gateway as well, but I think he's going to try and get most of internet from downtown.
So I've been working on some software. Someone was telling me, Peter was telling me about IPFS. Can you hear me? Hello?
No, it's just going into record.
Okay. So I've been working on a website that lets you post stuff and follow people, but it's cool because it's running on IPFS. So how many of you are familiar with IPFS before I start? All right, so I'll give an introduction. IPFS is basically a replacement for HTTP. The big shift is from location-based addressing to content-based addressing. So what that means is when you use something with HTTP, you're going to like google.com/whatever, like cat.jpg. And what happens is servers go down, things get changed, links get broken all the time. That's not permanent, and it also limits you to one provider for the content. You have to go all the way out to Google or Facebook to get that picture. IPFS, instead of using a location, it uses a unique identifier for the content. So instead of going out to Google, you could reach out to any peer on the network and say, help me find this piece of content with this ID. And that means that if someone on the same Wi-Fi network as you has it, it's that fast. You just get it straight from them. Or if one host goes down, you can get it from anyone else on the network. So there's a lot of advantages. And it plays really well with MeshNet, decentralization, all that stuff. So this is what I've been working on. not this. So it's called static.network. Let's say you visit it for the first time. What it does, it generates new keys. This is my key right here. And that's your unique identifier. Only you could post under that ID. This is IPFS, by the way. This is my IPFS key.
Excuse me.
It's okay. And so I'll just give a little demo. So there's no passwords or anything because it's all using cryptography. So by default, it makes me anonymous. I could sign up, add a name like Oliver, change my picture, whatever. There's no backend at all. There's no servers like hosting any of this stuff. I could say hi over here. Wait, let me change my name to Oliver too. Oh, look, it already started loading in my post from before. So this is me in another tab. And I see Oliver 2's post. I see he's online. And this is all peer-to-peer, so it just works a lot better. And now if Oliver 2 closes his computer, it goes offline, I'm serving his content too, so other people can now get it from me. It's a lot more resilient. There's all those advantages I talked about before. So yeah, any questions, anything? This is just React and this using JS IPFS. So this is really new. This is like the web browser implementation. So it runs totally client-side. Previously, you had to run like a daemon on your computer. And they finally got a big feature working like a few weeks ago. So now it actually works, which is like a brand new thing. The DHT, distributed hash table. So there's still a lot. It's really like experimental. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be made, but it works obviously. Yeah. Yeah, so this is just downloading the app. The app itself could be fetched using IPFS, so this is just a convenient way to get on it.
So I mean, just to be clear,
Uh-huh.
this would work, like, does the JS IPFS library, does that work with say, on the same Wi-Fi network or the internet?
I mean, like I said, it's still being developed, so maybe not right now, but yeah, absolutely, in the future. Yeah.
Right, because that's kind of the key component. Like, let's say Mesh Network Plus this could be that the whole building could have a static network, but not be on the internet. So
Yes.
it could still be uploading this,
Absolutely.
talking to whoever, talking to the person in your dorm or building.
Yeah, this is actually a progressive web app, so that means it'll keep running even if you don't have a connection to the internet. It'll use like the local copy of the website.
Progressive web app doesn't mean it's going to get to somebody else.
Yeah, but no, IPFS is definitely going to do that.
Right. So right.
That's on the roadmap.
That's the beauty of IPFS plus Mesh. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, so with this, you could, if you're hooked up to the mesh, you could start publishing stuff under your own URL. Like, it's totally secure and like provably you. It's pretty new. I'm not aware of anything like this that exists. Any other questions?
Yeah. How do you like? So you create kind of like a profile the first time you connect. I think how understood, and then how do you move it from one computer to another to your phone? To
So I'm going to add an option to export and back up your keys and all that stuff. And obviously a website's not ideal because you might like delete your cookies or something and your stuff goes missing. I'm going to add apps and all that stuff.
So it stores your key
in the local storage in your browser, yeah.
Okay.
So that's why just going to a new incognito window is just a new profile, everything.
Okay. So it's okay.
We should get IPFS working on the mesh with some local nodes.
Absolutely.
To support this node.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you want to like follow it on GitHub, it's like GitHub/static. Our static network is my username. So you can give it like a star. It's pretty new. Any questions? Cool.
actually more interested in the smart contracts and that aspect of Ethereum as a platform for development.
I think anybody can start a channel on.
Can?
Yeah.
Is it okay? I didn't know if you had to be an admin.
I don't think so. I think